Really the most extreme political organization that's existed in American history.
MAGA Republicans are to destroying American democracy.
Today's Republican Party is driven and intimidated by MAGA Republican extremists.
And yet Trump and his MAGA supporters not only embrace political violence, but they laugh about it. Because the MAGA Republicans, led by a defeated president, is trying to steal history now.
All right, here we go. Just hours from now, President Biden will be delivering arguably the most pivotal speech of his presidency. But he may have a difficult time delivering a unifying message about the country heading into what is shaping up to be the most divisive presidential campaign in U.S. history. And that's where we top the hour. Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Sandra Smith in New York. John, nothing going on in that city you're in today.
No, I'll tell you, I told you it was going to be a busy week, right? And it has been. I'm John Roberts in Washington, and this is America Reports. Presidents love to use the annual State of the Union address to tout the success of their agenda and declare that the State of the Union is strong. But based on recent polling, Americans don't seem to agree that Biden is doing a good job as commander-in-chief. Heading in
tonight's speech, the president is just 1 point shy of his lowest approval rating of his presidency. And what may be even more alarming about his unpopularity is how it compares to his predecessors at this point in their presidencies.
Fox team coverage now to kick us all off. Former House Speaker Newt Gingrich knows a thing or two about State of the Union addresses. He's here on how Republicans should respond to the expected attacks from Biden. But first to our Jackie Heinrich live at the White House. And Jackie, what is the White House saying about the president's overarching message tonight?
Well, John, the president's message tonight, his delivery is going to be as important as the substance, given pervasive voter concerns about his age and his ongoing bid to convince America to keep him in the White House until he's 86 years old. The broad themes are twofold from what we can gather, primarily trying to play up the achievements of his last 3 years, making the case that despite voter sentiments about the economy is actually doing very well. He's going to paint greedy corporations as the boogeyman responsible for stubbornly high prices and getting less bang for your buck these days. The other big aim is to paint a stark picture of what this country would look like under another Trump presidency. Biden's campaign has shifted recently into a much more sharply negative messaging phase, focused on Trump's risk to democracy, given his efforts to overturn the 2020 election, and Republican plans to roll back freedoms with restrictive abortion policies, they say. But Biden has a giant liability on the border. It is consistently among top voter concerns. The president will shift blame to the GOP for rejecting the Senate-brokered bill and push again for Congress to legislate the country out of the crisis.
I think the president will really lay out why stopping progress on a real problem for the American people only because of politics is wrong. That's not the way he conducts his presidency. That's not what the American people want. And that's also one of the choices we have, whether we're going to put politics above progress.
House Speaker Mike Johnson already hitting back.
He has full authority to close that border completely right now, but he won't do it. And there are 7 or 8 other executive authority actions that he has in statute that he could use, but he won't. And that is so perplexing to us. I've told him myself, I don't understand why you wouldn't do it. Why wouldn't you stop the humanitarian crisis? There's a political purpose to this.
We have learned today that the president will not announce any executive actions to address the border tonight, despite rumblings for weeks that some kind of announcement was in the works. We are hearing, though, from reports that he will make some sort of an announcement on Gaza, which is a source of discontent from within his base, John.
Yeah, well, to announce any executive order on the border would be to acknowledge that, yes, he does have the power to do more things. Perhaps that's why he's not doing it. Jackie Heinrich for us, 1600 Pennsylvania. Jackie, thank you. Sandra?
Well, let's bring in former House Speaker Newt Gingrich. He's also a Fox News contributor. Thank you very much, Speaker, for joining us. This is an incredibly consequential speech that the president is expected to deliver tonight. He has said that he is going to attempt to unify the country. He has said that many times. How can you expect that to happen when he has spent so much time going after the MAGA base that's supporting the former President Donald Trump?
Well, I don't think he does expect that to happen. He just knows that's what he ought to say. Look, Biden has 2 huge challenges. The first is a performance challenge. He'll gain a little bit if he gives a good speech with energy and can actually stand there for an hour and a half, but he will lose an enormous amount if at any point in that speech he clearly stumbles, has a cognitive problem, or in some way loses track of what he's saying. So in that sense, a personal performance component of this speech is probably the most important single factor. Second, whatever he says, he's in conflict with reality. It's a reality that an illegal immigrant that Biden allowed to come into this country killed a young college student at the University of Georgia. It's a reality that Venezuelans that Biden allowed to come into this country beat up New York policemen. You go down the list. The average person knows it's a reality that food is too expensive. Electricity now, we're being told, we may actually be running out of this summer because the demand is higher and we're not encouraging the building of new electric production systems. So when you look at people's reality, no matter how many words Biden says, he can't unlock the failures that are directly affecting people. And that's why I think he has a very, very big challenge tonight.
Mr. Speaker, this is just a sampling of some of the rhetoric we've heard from those on the left. Listen.
MAGA Republicans are this extreme part of their party, and that is just facts. We have seen MAGA Republican officials who don't believe in the rule of law.
What we've got is a right-wing isolationist.
We have seen hating on MAGA. I can tell you have a clear response to that. While I put this Fox News poll up, Mr. Speaker, that finds the president failing to unify the country. 26% say he's mostly succeeded. Nearly 70% say he has mostly failed, Mr. Speaker.
Well, two examples. The U.S. Supreme Court voted 9-0 on the Colorado case that Donald Trump was not the great threat. The Democrats were. Literally, by 9-0, they said efforts to knock Trump off the ballot were inappropriate. So Trump turned out to be in favor of democracy and your right to have a candidate, and the Democrats turned out to be in favor of strangling that right. Second example, they've had apparently at least 320,000 illegal immigrants flown into the U.S., not walked across the border, flown into the U.S. The secret Biden government will not tell us where they went, who they are, whether or not they're a drain on our resources, whether or not they're a threat to us. Well, the average American looks at that, and the left can't say enough anti-MAGA things. This is not about MAGA. This is about America. It's about the quality of life. It's about your children's education. It's about getting a job. For example, Biden is losing young people in part at a remarkable rate because they go out with their college degree and they can't find work. They can't figure out how to pay for a house. So you're seeing a dramatic shift. African Americans, Asian Americans, Latino Americans. The New York Times, of all places, had a report last week that Trump is now carrying Latinos. And the chief analyst at the New York Times wrote, the reason people are against Biden is they do not like him. Tonight, I don't think they will like him a whole lot more.
Very interesting. And the GOP rebuttal will come from Katie Britt to the State of the Union address. I know you're writing in this Hill piece today, Mr. Speaker, that you see this as an audition for the Trump VP list. So that will be interesting to watch as well.
Absolutely.
All right. Mr. Speaker, great to see you, and thanks for coming on the program.
Great.
All right.
Glad to do it.
And there you go. So we'll be watching for all of that tonight. And major member of the Republican Party, Elise Stefanik, the House GOP conference chair, she'll be joining us on this program coming up. We'll also get her thoughts on what she anticipates for the president tonight and also the GOP rebuttal.
I just spent some time chatting with her in the green room, so look forward to having her. By the way, Jackie Heinrich mentioned this big announcement on Gaza that's just broken. The president tonight is going to call on the U.S. military to build an emergency port in Gaza to accept large ships carrying food. So be watching for that tonight as well. All right, now this.
It's been very hard for us and family. Every day that just passes by is harder to bear. This tragic murder that was committed to my niece, Elizabeth Medina.
The family of a Texas teen speaking out about their loss says the illegal immigrant accused of killing her is arraigned in court today. We will have the latest on the suspect's court appearance.
And as President Biden
let him in. It's more evidence of why the border crisis will be in focus at President Biden's State of the Union tonight. Several Republican lawmakers are inviting victims of brutal migrant crimes as their guests at tonight's address. The speech will follow a vote by the House on the Laken-Riley Act, a bill named in honor of the Georgia nursing student allegedly murdered by an illegal migrant last month. And there will be an empty seat at the State of the Union in her honor tonight. Democrat California Congressman Ro Khanna is standing by to talk about today's House vote and how his party might work with Republicans to get the border crisis under control. But we begin with Fox team coverage. Nate Foy has got more on the court date for an illegal migrant accused of capital murder in the state of Texas. Chad Pergram, though, kicks things off live on Capitol Hill. Chad, the border is the main issue tonight on Capitol Hill. Will it be?
John, good afternoon. Republicans are bringing the border right to the House chamber tonight. They aim to contrast the president's speech with violent crime associated with the border crisis. Notably, the murder of Laken-Riley in Georgia. The suspect is in the U.S. illegally and had trouble with the law.
Last Friday, Laken's parents laid their daughter to rest, their lives destroyed by the senseless and depraved actions of a criminal who should not have been here, and the callous indifference of the President and the Secretary of Homeland Security.
The House is working on a bill which mandates the detention of illegal immigrants who face other criminal charges. Jose Ibarra is accused of killing Riley. Authorities cited him with shoplifting and the endangerment of a minor. The House votes on the bill later. Democrats believe the plan goes too far.
A victim of trafficking or domestic violence who defended themselves against an abuser would have to be detained under the law. But the sweeping approach in this bill would deprive immigrants of the due process that everyone is afforded to prove that they are innocent of a crime.
Democrats say the president doesn't need to recalibrate his campaign to address the border.
I don't think there's any reset that's needed. I think what the president will do is tout the work that we have done together to lower the costs that everyday Americans face, as well as the record that he has achieved in job creation and the economy.
Now, Nicole Malliotakis of New York is bringing a police officer who was attacked by migrants in Times Square as her guest tonight. Mike Collins of Georgia invited the parents of Laken-Riley to attend. They declined. There will be an empty seat in the gallery in honor of Laken-Riley. John?
All right. State of the Union tonight, 9 o'clock. Full coverage here on Fox. Chad, you'll be part of it. Thank you so much. Sandra?
Thank you.
Thank you, John. An illegal immigrant appearing in a Texas courtroom today on capital murder charges for the death of 16-year-old cheerleader Lizbeth Medina. Her family now advocating for change following her senseless death.
Tragic murder that was committed to my niece, Lizbeth Medina. It is imperative and very important for me, not only me, my family, to address the issue of criminal backgrounds and second chances. Laws, I do believe, should be stricter.
Nate Foy is live with the latest on this for us. Nate, what has happened in court so far?
Well, Sandra, we are still waiting on the illegal immigrant in this case to face the judge on capital murder charges. However, just in the past few minutes, we did hear from his lawyer who says that they will enter a plea of not guilty and they look forward to trial. We also know that right now the victim's mother is in the courtroom just 3 months after finding her daughter dead in the bathtub. The judge is not allowing cameras inside the courtroom. Take a look at the suspect here. His name is Rafael Govea Romero. And ICE lodged an immigration detainer on him. A Texas grand jury indicted him on capital murder charges. And get this, Sandra, about 15 months before the murder, police in Texas reportedly arrested him for burglary, so he was on probation. He's accused of beating and stabbing 16-year-old Lizbeth Medina to death. Lizbeth's aunt tells Fox today people with a criminal history like that should not be free to commit more crimes.
I want to honor Lizbeth's memory by ensuring that justice is served for her and that the right steps are taken to prevent from similar tragedies happening against anybody.
Lizbeth's mother, Jacqueline Medina, also calls for stricter laws to protect children. She says that she's heartbroken to see the murder of Georgia college student Laken Riley. Telling Fox News Digital, quote, as someone who has also lost a daughter to violence at the hands of an illegal immigrant, I understand the pain and devastation that comes with such a senseless act. It is heartbreaking to see another family go through what mine has endured. Again, we are still waiting for Govea Romero to appear before the judge. He was arrested days after the murder. Police say they tracked him using the victim's cell phone because he took it after allegedly committing that murder. We'll send it back to you.
Nate Foy on that story for us. Nate, thank you. John?
You got it.
All right, let's bring in Ro Khanna. He is congressman from California, and he is going to be there tonight. Congressman, you heard what Nate Foy was talking about, this tragedy involving Lizbeth Medina in the state of Texas. As well, the suspect in Laken Riley's murder, his name is Jose Ibarra, apparently has ties to a notorious Venezuelan gang. His brother, Diego, is said to be a member of Tren de Aragua, which is also wreaking havoc in New York City. Now, tens of thousands of Venezuelans have been paroled into this country after they came across the border. Tens of thousands of more have been flown into this country in secret by the Biden administration. A lot of people, Congressman, are rightly asking, what has Biden border policy unleashed on this country?
Well, John, first of all, my heart goes out to the victim's family. It was a brutal murder, unconscionable, and I can only imagine the grief. Second, we need to do a better job of making sure that we are vetting people before they're coming across the border. That is why the president supported the bipartisan border legislation that would have added border agents, that would have done a better job of vetting. Third, if you really want to deal with the situation in Venezuela, we've got crippling sanctions there that haven't worked. Maduro is still in power, and that's leading to so many people leaving. And what we should be doing is relooking at those sanctions so we're not aggravating the problem.
There are a lot of Republicans who say, look, the president could deal with this border problem tomorrow simply by reinstating all of those executive orders that he rescinded on his first day in office. Do you not agree?
Well, there has to be a balance. I did not support in candor Donald Trump's policies. I didn't support all the policies of saying that you needed to split up families. I didn't support the policies that said you could not, even if you had a legitimate asylum case, come to the United States. What I do support is more Border Patrol agents. What I do support is processing more folks before they come to the border. What I do support is having work authorization once they're here so that they can actually be productive and not on the public dole. I wish we could just get a bipartisan solution.
So Fox News took a poll and asked people, has Biden succeeded or failed on border policy? 24% of people said he mostly succeeded. 71% said he has mostly failed. Where would you put it? Succeed or fail?
Well, I wouldn't personalize it. I would say we, as a United States government, are failing, whether it's Republican or Democrat. I mean, the reality is we have people coming into this country undocumented and in record numbers, and we haven't done enough to make sure that we're vetting folks, that there is a secure border and that there's a process. And we aren't doing enough to make sure that people in Venezuela don't have crippling economic conditions where they're leaving. So how do we deal with that is the question.
We seem to hear about this almost all the time. The crimes that are perpetrated at the hands, allegedly, of illegal migrants are done by people who had committed other crimes and were let back out in the streets. Jose Ibarra is one of those people. The Laken Riley Act, expected to be voted on in the House today, it would detain illegal immigrants who are charged with theft. That's what Jose Ibarra had been charged with. He was let out. He went to Georgia and allegedly killed Laken Riley. Where do you come down on that bill? Where will your vote fall?
I'll tell you why I and most Democrats are a no on that bill. Because the bill says that if you are arrested, that you could be detained indefinitely. I used to think, John, that in this country we used to have a jury process. You have to go through a process, you have your rights, and you decide whether you're convicted or not. And to have someone detained without that due process, I think, is un-American.
Right? Even if that person allegedly goes on to kill a beautiful nursing student on the University of Georgia grounds?
Well, obviously that is horrific, but you know what he did, which was steal $200. I don't think people would have been able to draw a direct correlation between everyone who steals $200 and being a brutal murderer. He deserves the entire book thrown at him, and I don't have an ounce of sympathy, and I was as outraged as anyone by his crime. But the policy needs to still uphold our fundamental rights.
There's one more thing I want to ask you about, Congressman. The outgoing climate czar, John Kerry, was talking about Russia's bad behavior with climate. And he said this. Listen here.
If Russia has the ability to wage a war illegally and invade another country, they ought to be able to find the effort to be responsible in the climate issue. Russia is one of the largest emitters in the world. If Russia wanted to show good faith, they could go out and announce what their reductions are going to be and make a greater effort to reduce emissions now. And maybe that would open up the door for people to feel better about what Russia is choosing to do at this point in time.
He's saying if Russia were to announce some sort of measure on climate change, people would feel better about the war in Ukraine. Is that a man who's too close to his job?
That's that's an absurd comment. I don't know what he was thinking, but I can't defend that. That's an absurd comment. Look, Putin's biggest crime is the invasion of Ukraine and in killing innocent people. And to think that if he had better climate policy, that would in any way excuse a brutal war is just foolishness. And he should certainly retract that statement. And I really don't know what the guy was thinking.
Yeah, well, one thing is we won't have to listen to it anymore. Congressman Khanna, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it. We'll see you tonight.
Thank you.
Sandra?
Well, while President Biden will be doing his best to deflect blame for the border crisis during tonight's State of the Union, Congresswoman Elise Stefanik will be bringing a Border Patrol agent with her, fed up with the problem, as her guest. She'll tell us why.
Plus, Madison Allworth is here, and she'll dig into why menu prices keep going up and who is to blame. Here she is with the preview. Madison?
Hey, John. Yeah, you know, President Biden is expected to talk about
House floor, where they are now debating the Laken Riley Act. The House is debating this act. The bill requires the detention of illegal immigrants who have run-ins with the law. Jose Ibarra is accused of murdering her. He was in the country illegally and was cited for shoplifting and endangering a child. The House is going to vote on this afternoon, we're told, just before President Biden's State of the Union message. So we'll be watching for this.
Some of the small snack companies, you won't and think you won't even notice what they're doing. When they charge you just as much for the same size bag of potato chips, only has a hell of a lot fewer chips in it. The Cookie Monster. He pointed out his cookies are getting smaller. The American people are tired of being played for suckers.
President Biden once again going after businesses, blaming them for shrinkflation. But business owners say the real culprit is government, driving up costs on everything from supplies to labor. Economist Ryan Bourne will show us how Biden policies and price controls can make things worse. But first, Madison Allworth live at the Old Mill Tavern, a family-owned restaurant in Chester, New Jersey. And who do they blame there for the increased cost of doing business, Madison?
You know, John, they say it's the state government, specifically their issues with minimum wage laws. I want to bring in the owner, John, of the Old Mill Tavern. John, New Jersey raised their minimum wage again this year. It's been 5 years in a row. What has that done for your business?
It's increased our labor costs, which on top of food and liquor costs, it's really driven us to have to cut margins and raise prices, and it's just been very tough.
Right, and so the way that you operate your business is being dictated by the state government, federal government, and the argument is it's a living wage. But in your establishment, you have many different, servers, waiters. Who in your workforce is getting that minimum wage, and does it impact them?
The minimum wage is really going to folks in our business that are from high school. So it's really targeted. Maybe there should be a split between minimum wage for part-time employees and full-time employees.
Okay, and so labor, biggest inflationary cost. You're not alone in that. Majority of small business owners say that is their biggest inflationary pressure. So what have you had to do to deal with labor increases?
The biggest thing is increased prices, and this is a family-oriented business. A lot of seniors come here, so we don't want to put too much burden on them or raise them to where we're not sustainable as a profitable business.
Even still, you've had to raise prices 18 to 20%. Are you taking home a bigger profit margin?
No, actually, our profit margin has shrunk because of all those inflationary pressures.
Okay, John, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for stopping by.
Absolutely. So there you have it. I mean, tonight we're expecting the president to talk about businesses taking home, getting greedy, if you will. But small businesses, they're dealing with all the inflationary pressures that we feel. And it's difficult when a business owner is being told how to run their establishment. Another thing that I want to leave you with, John says they were fortunate last year. They had a lot of people coming through. This year, he has started to see that slow down. It's a big question on the economy, how it's impacting the family. All of that going to be in focus tonight. I'll send it back to you.
All right. Well, it looks like he's doing a brisk business at lunchtime today, though, so that's good. Madison Allworth for us. Madison, thank you.
Yes.
Sandra?
People definitely look like they're having a good time there. Meanwhile, for more on all this, let's bring in Ryan Bourne now. He's the Cato Institute's chair for the public understanding of economics. Thank you so much for joining us. It really struck us when we saw you and the Cato Institute writing about this. But you've got this president who is now bemoaning shrinkflation, as if it's the company's problem that they're dealing with higher input costs and putting less chips in the bag. What is the problem here and what's driving this?
Well, shrinkflation is quite simply a manifestation of inflation. What do we mean by that? Well, it's certainly the case that in 2022 there are a range of businesses that sold snacks, household products, that decided, in light of the inflationary pressures they were facing, the increase in costs or the increase in wage costs that they were expecting to come, they had to decide, shall we increase the price of a packet of our food or our household product, or shall we marginally reduce the size? And they decided that consumers actually would prefer to continue to buy a packet that was slightly smaller in terms of the number of units of the product, but at the same price. And you know, they decided to do that. They decided to do that because they thought it was better for their business. And what the president is essentially saying is, no, you should have taken a different decision, which in reality would have meant increasing the price of the package of the product. So I actually think Joe Biden should be very grateful for these companies that have engaged in shrinkflation, because the alternative would have been higher package prices. And I think that would have made the inflation, which was caused primarily by too much stimulus in the economy, that would have made that much more salient.
That's just not what's happening, though. I mean, he's going after the corporations. You probably saw the New York Post opinion piece, Joe Biden's State of the Union shrinkflation swindle, which reads, the White House apparently believes that scapegoating corporate executives will magically redeem the reputation of Bidenomics. Shrinkflation and many other problems are the bitter harvest of Bidenomics. No matter how many wrenches Biden has thrown into the nation's economy since January 2021, he considers himself blameless for all the disruptions and dislocations he has sowed. This is Sherrod Brown grilling Jerome Powell on what they say is price gouging at today's Senate banking hearing. Got to hear this.
Are you concerned that the wide adoption of these price gouging strategies, these pricing schemes, if you will contribute to inflation?
I mean, I think it works both ways. Remember that prices go down when there's no one in the store, and they go up when there are a lot of people. I don't know that it have implication for, for inflation.
This happens every time. I mean, with gas prices, it's the speculators when the price is going up. When it goes down, it's simple supply and demand, right? So are they going to get away with this? Are voters buying this whole concept that they're being price gouged in this inflationary environment? These are prices under the president. I'll finish off with this. Overall up 18%. While they like to tout that the inflation rate has come down, which it has, that does not mean prices are coming down. They're up 18% overall. Food prices are soaring to up 21%, and shelter's up 19%. Last thought on that, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, let's put this into context. Before, over the 11 years from 2010 to 2021, food prices only went up by 18%. So that shows you now 21% in the last 3 years, the huge amount that's gone up. And if you ask the public who they blame for inflation, it tends to break along partisan lines, as most things do these days, with Republicans blaming too much spending in Congress and Democrats blaming greedy corporations. But, you know, There was a period in 2022 when some companies made bigger profits, but again, that was a manifestation of inflation. It was because certain companies' prices were going up before their wages had gone up. But why were they going up? Well, there was simply too much stimulus in the economy, too much spending from